document exchange could take years, depositions could take years. That's why these suits, I would say, usually do end in settlements. But we're not sure if this is what will happen here. In this particular case, it usually does because of costs of litigation and costs of discovery. But we shall see this one because it's slightly different in terms of the political aspects of it.
Now, I know, can you give us a little bit about your background and what your firm specializes in?
Sure. So I am a partner at the firm by the name Jodré Brenecki LLP, and we specialize in personal injury and employment law, both for plaintiffs and defendants. We have experience in other types of cases, primarily litigation, but our firm primarily right now deals with injured workers, injured New Yorkers in general, as well as various types of various facets of employment law.
Now, are there any cases that you can talk about that you've handled recently that we might have heard of?
I recently brought a case. It was a front cover in the New York Post. It was also in the online edition, so you can look that up. It's a case that's currently pending in Brooklyn, in Kings County Supreme Court. It is a case against French Connection, which is a textile factory, a fashion brand, a clothing brand. My client alleges that she was very many times sexually violated by a coworker, and that the company knew about it or permitted or should have known because it was happening on the premises in various rooms that were utilized for that purpose by the perpetrator. My client complained about it. She was then discharged without pay for the last week. So I think it's a pretty egregious stance on the part of the company. We've just started, so discovery hasn't started yet, but that's definitely one of cases that we recently brought that had some media attention.
Oh, definitely. And now, are you seeing like more or less cases like this type of incident?
Well, right now, if you look at the public sphere, there's a lot going on because of the Diddy lawsuits and the civil lawsuits that stem from the Diddy lawsuit. And then we have the recent allegations against Jay-Z. So the topic has been pretty popular lately. We also had on my home turf the allegations against Mayor Eric Adams that have surfaced pursuant to the large window that was open for sexual assault survivors. So there was one person who started that lawsuit, alleges some act that happened, I think, about 30 years ago. So there is a rise in these suits right now. Mine, the one that I referred to earlier, is specifically in the context of employment law. So we're not just alleging here that my client had this unpleasant experience with the perpetrator, which she did, and he is also named the defendant in the suit. But we are looking at it from the perspective of the behavior of the employer. So the wrongful termination, the discrimination on the basis of her gender and nationality, because there were other women of her nationality and actually pretty similarly looking that were treated in a similar way. So there's a lot going there. So it's a bit different, but there's definitely a bigger spotlight on these types of issues right now. Started with the Me Too movement, then it died out a bit. Now we're back because of the Diddy suit, is my opinion, why this is right now the spotlight.
So these kind of things are just kind of getting more highlighted. They're more well known than they were in the past.
Yes.
And I know there's another case. This is a little bit different. It's an antitrust, but it's being talked about a lot. Is the Texas-led suit against BlackRock and Vanguard Group. Now, Texas, their antitrust is saying they allegedly were boosting electricity prices through their investments. What are some of the things, like, can you discuss like this case and some of the things that are going on here?
Sure. So there's multiple states. Texas is one of them, as you said, that are leading this effort. It's a lawsuit that's alleging that these three companies, so BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, have unduly utilized their influence in the market to affect the output of coal production companies, as well as the prices, the prices that result for the people in living in their states. So there are two things that they're alleging, right? They're alleging unfair business advantage over the coal companies and affecting them and influencing their operations. And the result that they're alleging is for the society in general is the prices. And they're emphasizing that right now prices went up everywhere because of inflation. And this is just another burden on the shoulders of the American society. So that is what's happening in these lawsuits. Now, the companies claim that the lawsuits are baseless because they're saying that they legally own the influence that they're exerting because they're just casting votes in the companies that they invested in, and they have the right to do so. So it is a very interesting case, this one, as opposed to the previous antitrust losses that we were, discussing and highlighting in the media. This one's a bit different because these companies are claiming it's all legal what they're doing. Now the politicians are technically advocating for the coal companies. They're technically advocating for the people of the state who are bearing the burden of the higher prices. But there are voices that it also has something to do with their ties to the coal companies themselves. Now, what it brings us to a point where this is what litigation is for. So we have to do discovery on this issue and see who is right, if they're doing it legally or if they're who's influencing what exactly, because we're saying they're trying to promote woke policies by being involved in climate change to begin with. The other side is saying that they're concerned about our residents and whatnot, but there's some evidence to pointing to the fact that they may also be tied to the coal companies themselves. So once you start the discovery process, you will have to uncover facts, but this will be a lot of work to get to the bottom of this. Document exchange could take years, depositions could take years. That's why these suits, I would say, usually do end in settlements. But we're not sure if this is what will happen here. In this particular case, it usually does because of costs of litigation and costs of discovery. But we shall see this one because it's slightly different in terms of the political aspects of it.
And so there's no, do you think it'll likely end in some type of settlement?
As I said, it may or may not, depending on the volume and expense of discovery that is required, because this is usually what stumps all civil litigation, is because discovery is incredibly time-consuming, tenuous, and expensive. And the bigger your case, the bigger your allegations, just like here. As I said, what makes this a little different is that they're not just discussing the market ramifications of this. There's some political element to it. There's some accusations of intent to influence political aspects. So this really, really requires heavy discovery and very creative and very smart approach in how this should be argued before a jury if it goes to a jury. So as this process unfolds, we will see if they want to get deeper into this. If not, they will start discussing settlement. But I'm sure you're interested in the fact if that settlement would be favorable here or not. So we need to actually touch upon the issue of all these lawsuits. Very often they do have the character of a class action suit. So sometimes if people do at the end of it get some sort of a settlement, once it's divided between everyone who's affected, it's really pennies on the dollar. So if you think about the issues that are being raised, that are really actual issues that we're dealing with. But then if you think about the outcome, that the outcome is so insignificant for the people, then what is this all for? You can ask yourself that question. So settlements are good, but they're not always good. Sometimes you need to reach a verdict, you need to reach a conclusion, and you need to have that verdict and that conclusion spark some sort of a change. Otherwise, it's just lawyers making money, lawyers billing the hours, and at the end of the day, people getting a few dollars each. So hopefully that is not what happens here, regardless of whatever side the listeners are on. I think settlements are not always good. Sometimes we just need actual determination.
And to make some like a change occur. I was thinking about what brought to mind was Johnson and Johnson, which is like a class action type of thing. But again, they did a settlement recently, and that was going to average out. Like I think that the payout for the actual plaintiffs of the people that were harmed, it wasn't that large.
You know, it can be very little. Sometimes you even have payouts that are $50 per person. Sometimes there's $300 per person. So this doesn't really make a big impact on anything. Raising those issues alone, you can say, is already a step forward. It's some sort of a progress. Whatever direction you're in going in, raising the issues is already a good start. But we lived in such a fast-paced environment that things are very quickly forgotten. So a judicial determination or a jury verdict can just create a greater wave when it comes to change. But as I said, the cost of discovery is something that deters people from going to a jury, because you have to complete that before you can even ask them for help.
And bring the case to go to actual trial or whatever. But and now the other question is, like, as we're moving into 2025, are there any like trends in these type of cases or things that you foresee happening when it comes to like employment law or workplace law in
What
cases like this?
What is very interesting is that when these antitrust cases started, I mean, the cases themselves didn't start. What I'm saying, the legislature that sparked these cases. So we had the Sherman Act of 1890, then we had the Clayton Act, then we had the FTC Act. When these acts were enacted, it was because we had all these oil companies. That was the dawn of that type of tycoons, big industry, oil, big manufacturing, big production. They were starting to monopolize markets. Right now, we don't have those issues anymore as much as we did back then. Right now, the bigger issue is with the tech companies and with health insurance companies and what they're doing to affect the market and businesses around them and the customers. So that's definitely a change in that trend. And the trend is being reflected in the recent lawsuits, because we've had the landmark Google verdict where the federal judge stated that, well, this is definitely a company that monopolizes internet browsing and enters into partnerships with other tech giants such as Apple to dominate the market and then oust everyone else from the market. So this was a landmark ruling that came down fairly recently in the last 2 years. But then we also have, the Biden administration, which is not really liked that much by a lot of people in terms of what it did to the economy. But what they do start partially was a wave of these antitrust lawsuits against big companies. So I think that the DOJ did Amazon. There is the Facebook, so the Meta company. They've been all targeted in a way, but we need to see how far it goes, because as I said previously, we can start lawsuits left and right. That is your constitutional right, but then you have to actually bring them to a finish line and do something with it. And that is why I think we should not be relying as much on these as much as just looking closer at your politicians, making sure you elect people who will enact legislature and make sure that this is the spirit that we're discussing on a daily basis, and not just, some laws from 100 years ago that you have to right now flesh out in a very expensive court of law. So there's definitely, I think that our laws and our legislature and our jurisprudence and our lawsuits, it all goes with the times. So it may have been oil tycoons back then. Right now, it's the issues stemming from tech companies and medical coverage. And when it comes to employment, I think the main issue that we will be facing 2025 and onwards is the impact of AI. And I'm sure as you know, there's a lot of people who are very concerned about it. What will automation do to manual workers? How this will shape our economy? Personally, I am worried, and yes, I am worried, like, because I don't think that we have the mechanisms to right now to control the pace at which this is all happening, and also the elimination of potentially some bad actors in all this. So that is, once again, we should look at our politicians and make sure we elect people who will at least try to do something before they get spoiled by being a politician for too long.
I know, true, because I had talked to somebody in the cybersecurity space, and he was saying the same thing. They're seeing like an uptick of because the AI can, like, it helps them like learn. It can go into like your Facebook, your different types of things, find out things about these people. So they're getting like where it might have been them calling elderly people and trying to get Social Security or that type of thing. The AI actually knows enough about people that it's actually doing these like cyber hacks and stuff like that and helping them do it on a larger scale to like smaller people, smaller businesses, and they're really worried about that moving forward.
I would like to operate from an assumption that we are still the ones who can control how this develops and how far it goes. But as I said earlier, if there's any bad actors or people with bad intentions, then bad things could potentially happen, and we've seen that before in history. So hopefully, we will use that tool because it is a tool, and it should stay a tool and should remain a tool that can help us to be more efficient, help us to fulfill certain goals that are created with good things in mind. So if we stay on top of it, and if we don't let it go too far, then I think we should be fine. But you know how it goes with humanity. Let's not be very negative, but I just want to have a guarded prognosis.
Right. You're like saying if we built the proper framework and had, the things in place, but yeah, so we have to kind of, I know, guard ourselves, to make it exactly a positive situation where it can actually help people and not hinder us.
That is true.
Well, I definitely appreciate you being with us today. If people want to learn more about your law firm and just the cases that you're working on, what would be the best way for them to find you on the website?
We try to publish our most salient cases online on our website, jodrebrenecki.com. Um, Also, just we try to be present in the media whenever anything important happens, not just in terms of the cases that we bring, but also legal analysis. So, Google, our good old friend that monopolizes the market, just touching upon what we just discussed, would be a good way to stay in touch with us, and see what we're doing. But thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, and I would like to have you back to talk about the case I know that you're working on now because that's just unfolding. So maybe in the coming months, when that's starting to kind of, progress, that'd be great to get, follow up.
We can touch base regarding that early next year, as we're starting discovery very soon. So we should have some shed some more lights on these horrific facts.
Okay. Well, thank you very much so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too.